Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Oceanside Chat from the Viterbi Startup Garage. We are just like cooking with these Oceanside Chats. I swear we're having them every week. And we are very fortunate because we just have these people who continue to come back to us over and over again. I can't tell you how much we've appreciated Faye's support of the Garage and Garage teams. Just to kind of, this is something that I'm doing on Oceanside Chats now. I'm like, counting all of the ways that you have supported us. So last week, Jonah was with us. And I was like, I just need to tell you all the things Jonah has done for VSG. So Faye has actually participated in 3 of our VC Angel office hours, which is basically kind of an unfiltered feedback speed dating for our teams to pitch under 10 minutes and for investor types to hit them in the gut and tell them where they're failing and to give them a grade. And it's been wildly successful. And we do them on every quarter. And Faye's done 3 of those with us. She's also participated in 2 previous Oceanside chats. One of them was the world of B2B SaaS investing, and the second one was the self-motivated entrepreneur. And today she's coming to talk about translating vision into a weekly to-do list for yourself and your team. It's just been such a pleasure to work with Faye. Her expertise is in venture cap. I mean, she's really generalized in terms of what she can talk about: venture capital, marketing and customer acquisition, storytelling, finding product market fit through customer discovery, team building, hiring, understanding how accelerators and incubators with funds make decisions, and overall business development. She has spent 10 years, probably more now because your bio says 10, but years keep happening, as a founder, as a venture capitalist investor. She's also worked on startups that have been VC backed. And now she has her own fractional COO consultancy. And part of her ethos is women's rights, financial inclusion, funding underrepresented founders, things that really matter to me personally, but also are a part of what the Garage wants to constantly support. She also runs a young professionals of color community in Las Vegas. Is that still running, Faye?
It is. Actually, we just incorporated it as a nonprofit.
Awesome. So, I mean, with all of that in mind, I'm going to pass it over to Faye to start her talk. Just because, I mean, like, next time you come on, I think like 30 minutes will be spent on thanking you for all the stuff you've done for us. She also, for the record, often supports the teams that I warm introduce her to. She's just been such a great resource. Faye, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to let you take the mic and take us on this journey. I'm definitely going to be paying attention and taking notes because I feel like this talk is applicable for all sorts of people in innovation and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was so nice. I'm like, can you introduce me to like every talk that I do? Because that's probably the best introduction. And I know I feel you on the years. I have that written everywhere that I've done this for 10 years, and now it's like 13, maybe 14. Oh my God, years do keep happening. I'm like, wasn't I in high school last year? Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I love giving back to the Garage. I have been very involved in innovation ecosystems when I was an undergrad and when I did my MBA as well. And so I always appreciated the speakers coming in and sharing theoretical knowledge or tactical knowledge or investing knowledge. And so like I got a lot of value from it. So I always think, if they didn't do that for me, if they did that for me, I should do it for somebody else. And so I try to come back as much as possible. I will kick off the presentation soon, but since I do come back so often, I actually just want to put this out to everybody. If you guys, as a generalist, as somebody that's been an operator, been a startup entrepreneur, and been an investor, if you guys have any topics that you want to hear about or if you're curious about something, I'm more than happy to consider doing it if it's within my expertise. Just last night, I did a talk to another organization about fundraising from the investor's perspective. So understanding what happens on the back end of the VC investor cycle and why sometimes VCs ghost people or they don't get back to you quick enough, and shedding some light because it is very opaque. It's very, very opaque on the VC side. But anyways, yeah, really excited to talk to you today. My presentation today is actually my bread and butter. I am an operator. Even when I was on the venture capital side, I was running operations for the venture fund. And so I'm all about that big long-term vision and then actually breaking it down and making it happen down to like your weekly, daily to-do list. I think sometimes that's really, really difficult for a lot of people because generally you're one or the other, right? You're either a visionary, all, pie in the sky, always thinking about where I want to be in 10 years, or you're an executor. You're thinking about what do I need to do today, very in the details, in the weeds, struggle to pull back and look at it. And so I think as an entrepreneur, as somebody that, is probably working alone or with very few people, you need to have this varied skill set where you can take a step back, look at the big picture, and then pull yourself deep into the details and say, okay, I'm done thinking about 10 years from now. What am I going to do today to execute on that? So this is actually very content heavy presentation. So please do drop your note, any questions you have in the chat, and I'll address them as we're going because it'll move very quickly. Actually, I put the deck together because it's actually a combination of 4 presentations everywhere, all the different steps. So I took out a lot of slides, so hopefully we can get through it. But yeah, definitely drop anything in the chat if you have any questions.
Can I also just say,
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of out loud questions just because it feels more interactive. So if anyone is interested using the hand raise function, and I will wait for that moment to interrupt you, Faye, and say, hey, there's a hand up, and then we can kind of have them ask out loud. Not for any reason other than it's just so nice to hear people's voices when they ask their questions. Anyways,
Yeah.
continue.
No, 100%. It's so funny because the talk I did yesterday was in person, but they have the people submit their questions on Slack, which I thought was so funny because I'm like looking at the people, and then every time they have a question, they look down and they start typing. So here it's like the opposite. We always need some IRL interaction and some digital. So yeah, that works. Okay, so a big part of this presentation obviously is about focus. How do we actually focus on that vision? How do we focus on our daily tasks? And I love this quote by Steve Jobs. It talks about, focus is not this thing you aspire to or something you do on Monday and then leave it for the rest of the week. It's something you do every single minute. A lot of this presentation is going to be about, how do we make sure we're running towards that goal and we're not getting distracted so easily? As an entrepreneur, you're starting something from scratch. So yeah, it might not end up, the chances of you actually getting to that 10-year goal is so unlikely because startups pivot, they change their mind, the market changes, investors are investing in different things. And so the chances of you actually getting to that very specific vision is unlikely, but it's still important to focus and not change your mind so often and get that shiny object syndrome that we all get so often. And now we're all ADHD and just getting excited by all these different things. So why is it so hard to focus at a startup? There's 1,000 things you need to do when you're building from scratch, right? You have to incorporate your company. You have to get an accountant. You have to get a lawyer. You have to think about hiring a team. You have to do customer discovery interviews, figure out your sales and marketing, figure out how to make everything repeatable. There is so much that you have to do that it's so easy to just lose track of what is important and start doing the little things that need to be done. Which is why you see a lot of startups drop some of that basic stuff just so that they can prove out their market. And once they do that, they go back and they pick up the pieces. Second is new opportunities. I'm sure as founders, as entrepreneurs, even people that work in tech or students, you get new opportunities all the time. You get somebody that wants to partner with you. Somebody wants to buy your company. Somebody wants to use your company. Somebody wants to purchase your product, but they want you to change it for them, right? And they want you to make it custom to them. The third is distractions. We get distracted so easily, right? You're probably building your business and now you're seeing all the headlines and you're like, just the one we shared earlier today. Oh my God, should I have generative AI in my product? If I don't, is it even worth it? And then last is what we talked about, the shiny object syndrome of oh, healthcare is great, but now I want to move my company and do blockchain, blockchain on healthcare. It's so I've worked with over 300 founders and that never goes away. None of that ever goes away because you guys are visionaries. You guys are excited by what you're doing. But there is a solution, and the solution is to do less things faster. I'm not saying pick one thing and do that for the rest of your life, but it's all about doing less and experimenting and figuring out if it works or not. And that's the part that we do faster. So this is a framework that I always use with all of the companies that I work with. I basically want them to focus. And we're going to look over this framework a lot throughout this presentation. So if you take away anything, it's this, take a screenshot, whatever you need to do. This is how, oh, how did I do that? This is how you get from your vision to your weekly to-do list. It starts with your vision statement. I think a lot of you guys probably have a pretty clear vision, right? You want to change the world in some way. You want to build a product that's going to revolutionize something. Whatever it is, be very specific about it and make sure that's the thing that you're focused on right now and build out that vision. Next is your mission statement. That works hand in hand with your vision statements. I know a lot of people get them confused. Some people just use one. I think it's important to have both. Your vision is where you are in 10 years. Your mission statement is why you're doing it. Why does this matter? Does it matter? Are you changing the world? Are you introducing something brand new? Are you solving a problem that is faced by people and they need the solution? That's kind of your mission statement. A lot of obviously social enterprises, nonprofits, they focus more on the mission because that's what they're doing, but they also have their vision, right? For example, I volunteer a lot with like Feeding America. Their mission statement is that nobody that goes hungry, but their mission statement is to feed everybody today, and their vision statement is that everybody knows where their next meal is coming from. And then I always add in company values. We're actually going to skip over this today. I removed those slides because it's a little bit comprehensive, but your company values guide how you do everything. So without values, as you grow your team, they might not be heading in the same direction that you want them to, or they might not be doing things the way that you want them to. So values also help people focus a lot. And that's why you always hear, I'm sure you've heard like mission, vision, values, like always, create those three at the beginning of your company. What people don't talk about is after you've created those, what happens? Okay, you have a cool mission statement. Maybe you like printed it and put it on your wall somewhere. How do you actually use it? How do you make it tangible? Because it's very pie in the sky. It's very ambiguous. It's very vague for a lot of people, right? It's so far in the future. So that's what we'll talk about. We'll focus a lot on this today. I use the OKR framework. I live by this. If you guys have never heard of OKRs, they're called objectives and key results. And they're basically a way for you to focus in very short periods of time and run experiments to figure out if something's working or not. It's very popular in the tech ecosystem. I think the book that is like written on it is called Measure What Matters by John Doerr. And he was one of the first investments into Google. And he taught the founding team at Google how to use it. And they were obsessed with it, used it for everything, used it to experiment, to actually figure out how to build Google. And now I think it's used by all the big companies, Amazon, Google, Apple, you name it. And the reason for it, again, is because we have to move so quickly in tech, right? It's not like other industries that use other goal setting methodologies that like they look at everything once a year, once every few years. So it depends what stage you guys are in. If you guys like are just a founding team, 2-3 people, you probably don't need all these steps. The most important is company-wide OKRs. This is the goals for the company. So like, if to say it plainly, what your objective is this quarter. The department OKRs are each department, what they're doing to get to support the company in their goals. So, if you have a head of sales, a head of marketing, head of operations, whatever it is, whatever departments that you have, how they're going to help support the company. At the beginning, when you're just co-founders, which I assume a lot of you guys probably don't have employees yet, just focus on the company-wide OKRs because that's probably each co-founder's different objective, and you can skip the department. And then you talk about your individual KPIs, which is how that individual person, what they're going to do weekly to hit those goals. So for early stage startups, and when I say early, I mean like under 10 employees, what I would recommend is your vision and mission statement to review it every 1 to 5 years. If you're very early, probably closer to the 1 year. If you've been doing this for 3 years, you're sure this is what you're going to be doing, probably save it for closer to 5 years. The company-wide OKRs, you want to look at that quarterly, every 3 months. The department OKRs are monthly. If you're smaller, if you're a team of just 2 people, you can just do the company-wide OKRs monthly. Like the idea is, and this framework is very flexible. The idea is modeling it for how you like to work and how big your company is. And then finally, your individual goals should be weekly. So we'll go over every step of these. And again, a lot of content, so I'll run through it very quickly. So feel free to stop me if you'd like. Oh, it's so funny. Everybody uses Otter. I actually invested in Otter competitor. So I'm like, hey, you guys should check them out. They're called fireflies.ai. Okay, let's go back. So The way that this framework is used to focus is that the idea is if any opportunity comes up, if anybody approaches you with a new idea, if you come up with a new idea, you do not implement it unless it falls under one of the items in this pyramid, or if it's legally required, right? Like if you have to pay the IRS, pay the IRS. Don't not pay them. So nothing gets done unless it falls under one of these items, any new opportunity. And I'll go over this at the end of the presentation, how it works after I explain how everything else works together. So vision is the top of the pyramid. The reason this is so valuable is because you need a way to clearly communicate the vision that you see so clearly in your head. A lot of times founders, they can see it, right? They picture it in their heads, but they struggle to communicate it in 60 seconds. They struggle with investors, they struggle with customers, they struggle with prospects, people that they're hiring. Everybody, every stakeholder that's involved in your startup needs to know very clearly where you're trying to go. And so it helps you communicate your big aspirations. It helps you rally excitement, right? If you get a team together and say, in 10 years, we're going to be the best company at X, Y, or Z. It helps you focus your team's energy. This is where we're trying to head. You don't do anything unless it's heading in this direction, right? We don't want to try all these other experiments that are outside of that scope. And then it reinforces your brand internally and externally. So a few examples I have here. Google is a really good one. Their vision is to provide access to the world's information in one click. They don't want you to click more than that. And I don't know if you guys have gotten the new update on Google. I think it came out like 2 weeks ago, where there's a button right at the top that says generative AI, and you can just click it and it'll answer your question for you. So you don't even have to scroll. So they're doing a great job of, like, once you search and you click, and I turned it on. So now every time I ask a question on Google, AI gives me an answer. They're kind of here already. I feel like they need to change their vision statement because they just hit it 2 weeks ago. They probably are talking about it internally. But it's so clear where they want to go, right? They're like, any way that you can make this information easier for our customers to get to, that's what I want you to be working on. Accenture is a little bit non-tech. I always include this in case someone is non-technical. This is a bit more like a consulting agency, but I really like their vision statement. It's to become one of the world's leading companies, bringing innovations to improve the way the world works and lives. So to them, it's all about optimizing and improving the way people do the things that they do. So it's very vague, but because they're such a big company, they can do that. I would recommend you being a little bit more specific, but for them, it's all about support because they're a consulting firm, right? They're not selling a product, they're not packaging something up, they're providing a service, and their service is to bring innovation and change the way people work and live. And then finally, Amazon. Amazon is the funniest one. I always include this one because I think they're so funny. Amazon strives to be Earth's most customer-centric company, Earth's best employer, and Earth's safest place to work. Every time I present this to a group of people, they're like, what does Jeff know that we don't know? Because he's been to space. Like, what is he saying? Who's out there? So I love the fact that they use that. And honestly, I think they do it because they want to stand out. And so Amazon is known to be one of the most customer-centric companies in the world. So the question is like, okay, they're already kind of doing this, but there's a reason they added these other two in here as well, right? Earth's best employer and Earth's safest place to work. They've had a lot of issues with that in the past. And so this isn't their original statement, original vision statement. They recreated it after a few years to say, you know what? We haven't necessarily been the best employer. We haven't necessarily been the safest place to work. We still want to prioritize our customers. So that comes first. But then we also want to focus on these two things, which are internal, employee or facing. So another great example of like a vision statement that's really, really great. What components make a good vision? This is a little bit more tactical for you guys to build out your own vision statements. You should think of this as kind of like a prediction of what your company will look like once you've achieved massive success. I like to use the 10-year mark because generally in VC, we talk about like, we want to see returns in 10 years. So in 10 years, when you're IPOing or you sell for $500 million, what does your company look like at that time? What have you accomplished for you to have such success in 10 years? And usually a few things that are included to components to think about is your customer, your problem, your solution, and then really importantly, your moats. If you're not familiar with a moat, English isn't my first language, so I actually just learned the original definition of a moat. A moat is like, like those old-timey castles, they would like dig around it and they would put water and then the bridge would have to go down for people to come in and leave. So it's your defense system, right? They don't want anybody to like come into the castle or come into the city or whatever. I didn't know that. I just I came to the US for business school, so I just learned it from the business perspective. And so what a moat is your company's defense. What makes it different? What makes it stand out? And what creates a barrier to entry for competition? You know, for AI companies, that's their tech, right? Our tech is defensible because nobody else has our code. We have some of the best developers in the world. Um, for other companies, it can be their brand. Our branding is fantastic. Everybody knows who we are. It's going to be really hard for a competitor to get that sort of brand level that we're at with our customers. Whatever you think it is in the future, include that, right? So obviously, like maybe you don't have a product right now. That's totally fine, or you don't have a brand. Whatever you think your moat is can be included. You don't have to include all of these things, but just components for you to think about as you're thinking about the vision that you're going to articulate in one sentence. So once you have that, we want to build out that mission statement, right? Your why. Now that we know where you're going to be in 10 years, you know, how are you doing that? Why are you doing it? The value of this is really in defining how you're working today to achieve your mission. What is it that you're doing day to day? This is a little bit more tangible, very similar to the vision statement, but slight nuances. A clear mission statement will help you reinforce your organization's identity and brand, set clear expectations internally and externally, and set a boundary around what you do and therefore what you don't do. This goes back to the focus conversation, right? Of there are things that you're not necessarily going to focus on. You might not, they're not your bread and butter. There's no need to spread yourself thin, right? It's all about focus and going back to that focus. And so if we go back to my initial example of Feeding America, their mission statement is to feed every person that needs it. They don't, you know, there's starving animals out there. They're not feeding starving animals. There's people that need education. They're not tackling education. They're very, very focused on their mission. Their mission is to feed humans. And so they go out of their way to donate to soup kitchens and food distribution. And they're one of the most successful nonprofits for a reason. It's because they're very focused on their mission. They don't shift from it. I think even in their logo, there's like a food, like it looks like a wheat leaf or something, right? So they're like, this is exactly what we do. It's only about feeding. It's in their name. And it's helped them avoid a lot of this distraction. So a few examples, I actually pulled the same company so that you can see the differences. You'll notice they're very, very similar, but slightly nuanced, in one being the future and one being today, how we're going to get there. So Google, if you remember before, it was the one click. We help organize the world's information in one click. Their mission statement is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So they're already doing that. Their whole goal is accessibility and usefulness. Those are the key words here. Their first part is identical. We want to organize the world's information in one click. That's where we want to get to. We're not there right now. Sometimes you still have to go to Google page 2. Actually, I haven't done that in a long time. They're getting good. Remember when you used to have to go like Google page 5 and it would be the last page? I don't know if I'm aging myself. Or Celia, are these all young kids? Yeah, they don't know. When the information was limited. So yeah, to make it universally accessible and useful. If it doesn't fall under one of these, they don't do it. Accenture, to deliver on the promise of technology and human ingenuity. We help our clients become the next and best versions of themselves. That is their mission. They help these clients become the best versions of themselves. Their vision statement was about how they're going to change the world, right? So they haven't necessarily changed the world just yet, but they're helping their clients, and they do that day in and day out. And Amazon serve customers through online and physical stores and focus on selection, price, and convenience. Again, you'll notice there's like keywords that they're really emphasizing: selection, price, convenience. If it doesn't have to do with one of these things, we're not doing it, which actually is very comprehensive. Like, what else is there? I always try to think about that. So what makes, what's a good component of a, it says vision here, mission, of a mission statement? Think of it of what your company is trying to do today. For you guys, you might not necessarily be doing it today. That's okay, right? You guys are maybe in your first year of building your company, maybe your second year, you're still doing a lot of that customer discovery. That's totally fine. Usually, the questions that you want to ask yourself when thinking about a mission statement is, what do we do? What's our core business, right? What is it that we're focused on? What is it that we're good at? For who or where, like, is there a geographical limit? If you remember, like, Amazon's included the earth. So if you guys want to do that, we're doing this for the earth. And then the last is, how do we do it and what sets us apart? So very similar, but vision, long term, this is kind of like what you're thinking about all the time. This is where we're going to be, and mission is how we're going to get there and why it matters, right? A lot of times you see a lot of companies that are starting something. The mission statement can actually come from a lot of your customer discovery. Your customers will tell you, oh my God, this is so important to me. This helps me do X better. This helps me get to Y result. Oh, I'll go back. So think of it from your customer's perspective, right? Is what do they get out of it? Why is this so important? And what is going to drive you and fuel you day in and day out to complete your mission, your purpose? Okay, we're doing good on time. So those top three are what you hear about all the time. I'm sure you guys have like heard other talks about them. They're very non-tangible. We didn't go over values, but no time for that. But the three are very much, in a way, I want to say like theoretical. Like they're there, you think about them, they get you excited, but they're not, what do I actually do today? And that's where a lot of people get stuck, where they're like, okay, I'm building an AI company that, I'm going to use the example you posted earlier, an AI company to set up blind dates. Where do I start? Do I copy Tinder, or what do I do? And there's a lot of overwhelm there, and it's difficult to pull yourself away from that vision and into like, okay, let's actually build the plan. And so the second half of this presentation is all about how do you build that plan and how do you goal set for yourself to know that you're actually hitting those targets, to getting to that next stage, and motivating yourself. This is very tied to like the last talk that I did about the self-motivated entrepreneur. But more importantly, the amazing thing about setting these targets and tracking them is actually using them for fundraising, right? When you're an investor, you can use a lot of this to do a certain amount of customer discovery and track the response from your clients or your prospects, and then go out and fundraise and say, hey, yeah, I did talk to 200 people. I've been tracking this week over week, and here's all my data. And so it helps not just in organizing yourself and keeping yourself motivated, but also in your communication to investors, clients, prospects, even people that you're trying to hire, because obviously people want to work for successful entrepreneurs. So I combined these for this presentation to save a little bit of time, because I figure probably a lot of you guys don't have such a big team. You probably don't have departments yet. So we can just use it as just as objectives overall. So OKRs. Objectives and key results. Why are they valuable? Why do people use this? I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, this is used in all the big tech companies. All the VCs use them as well. Google is really big on it, Spotify, all the big guys. And the reason that they use it is because it helps you focus, but it also helps you move fast and push yourself more than you thought probably possible. This is a tangible part of strategic planning. Some would say this is the most important because it actually gets you to like do the stuff that you need to be doing. And maybe I'm just biased because I am more tangible. So the value of OKR is numerous. One, it helps you focus on measurable outcomes, not features or outputs. What that means is a lot of times you talk about doing something like, let's launch a product. And then you launch the product, great, check, you did it, but you didn't talk about the measurable outcomes, right? Those SMART goals that are like, okay, we launched the product. Was it successful? Was it not successful? Did we track the users? Did we track engagement? What was our hypothesis at the beginning? And are we actually hitting that? So was it a successful hypothesis or unsuccessful? Two is creating transparency within the organization. A big thing about OKRs is making it public to the entire company so everybody knows what everybody else is working on. Three is empowering team members to do their best work. I have a theory that everybody wants to do a great job. I know, very controversial. A lot of people are like, well, what if that person's a slacker? What if that? No, I think everybody really wants to do a great job. Sure, maybe there's a few exceptions or people are going through things personally, but for the most part, people particularly that join tech startups are motivated, they are ambitious. And if you set them up for success, you can get so much out of your employees and help develop them in ways that will really drive your company forward. And lastly, it creates a culture of constant iteration and improvement, right? That strategic, scientific method of experiment, isolate the variables, test, iterate, get better, and approve or disprove the hypothesis, and do it over and over and over again. Oh, that's weird. Examples of OKRs. So an objective is basically, actually, I guess I'll just start with the bottom one. An objective is basically, it's a little bit more vague. It's where you want to be. What do you want to accomplish this month or this quarter? For you guys, I would recommend doing it monthly. So let's say for this company's example, what they want to accomplish is they want to keep clients happy and increase referrals from their clients, right? Great way to get more business. Your clients are happy. They're going to share with their friends that they're happy with your work, and you're going to get more business. A really great way for you to increase your revenue. So key results, key results are basically the steps to get to that objective and to answer, was it successful or was it not? So these are your yes, no questions. So obviously keep clients happy. That's not quantifiable. How many referrals? What are we doing here? So the first is we want to receive 1 referral per client per year, right? So if you're doing this monthly, let's say you have 12 clients, you want to get 1 referral per month, right? You would just do the math to figure out how much that would be monthly. This metric lets you know that you've gotten that desired result. This is the ultimate, yes, we did it. To know that you're getting there, you want to hit 90% of SLAs set. If you're not familiar, SLAs are basically service level agreements. So basically saying every time a client reaches out, we respond within 12 hours. That's an SLA. So if you hit that 90% of the time, that is a check for you that your clients are happy. So this is the step needed to get to that desired result. And then last, set up standardized SLA for clients, right? So like we actually want very specific SLAs to know that we've hit 90% of them. So this is the action to get the result. So we're going to do the action to get the result. This is the step that needs to get done. And our theory and our hypothesis here is that if we hit 90% of this, if we hit 90% of our SLAs, we will get 1 referral per client. So this is how you structure your experiment, to know exactly what you need to do, exactly what you're tracking, and exactly what the hypothesis is. And then you assign an owner, right? So in this case, this Danielle person is going to make sure that this happens. If this does not happen, it comes back to Danielle. And we say, hey, what happened? What was the learning? Was it a yes? Was it a no? And why? It's never about, tracking and saying, you failed at this. It's more experimental, scientific. Let's run this experiment. Let's see how this works. Another example is massively grow revenue. Cool, great. Who doesn't want more money, right? All of us. So we do the exact same thing, right? We break it down. Okay, what does it mean to massively grow revenue? For us, that means $500,000 in monthly revenue, right? Let's say that is our success metric for this month, this quarter. I use this presentation for bigger clients, so I understand you guys aren't getting to 500K monthly anytime soon. Probably, if you are, great job. So we want to get to 500,000 in monthly recurring revenue. This is the metrics that lets us know this hypothesis was successful or it was not, right? So what is the step we need to take to get there? We can't just, it's almost impossible for one person to sell all of this. So what do we need? We need to hire 10 additional salespeople. I realize I'm using a lot of jargon in this deck. But if you don't know any, just raise your hand, I'll answer them. So an SDR is a sales rep. So in order to get there, we think we need to hire 10 really good sales reps. So this is the step needed to get to this result. And then the final is, what action do we need to do to get to that sales rep? So the next is, all right, we need to hire a sales operation person to project manage this team. That's the person that is going to manage the sales team. They're going to bring them on. They're going to hire all of them. So it all goes in order. So if you realize, a lot of this framework moves from the biggest thing you need to do and then moving it into smaller and smaller and smaller steps until you get to a full list of exactly what you need to be doing. And I always talk about this. We'll talk about this a little bit more later, but I always assign one owner. There should only be one person. If there's two people that are doing something, that is a recipe for disaster. They will always blame it on the other person, or, you know, if somebody's slacking, why is he slacking? Why is she slacking? I can slack too. Always have just one owner, even if they have the exact same objective. Just separate their objectives. So if this person's objective is to get 500K MRR, this person's objective is also to get 500K MRR. Maybe their steps are a little bit different depending on their department or results. But yeah, so these are two really, really good examples. So I'll repeat the framework. First, you want to set your high level objective, right? What is it you're trying to accomplish this month? Maybe it's, I need to meet an AI developer because I want to build this AI tool, right? And I need to meet this developer to know what is and isn't realistic, or maybe an AI dev shop. What is the metrics that lets you know you did that? Meeting them, right? Meeting them and having a conversation and submitting a proposal, getting them to submit a proposal for how much they want to get paid. What is the step that needs to get there? I need to start scouring angel lists to find somebody to work with, or, you know, those co-founder matching websites. And then the action required to get that result is I have to sign up for, or I have to pull a list of websites where I can find co-founders. So everything gets broken down so small that it ends up being your monthly, weekly, daily to-do list, from something that was so big to begin with, right? So we went from 500,000 a month down to, we just need to hire one person. And that's that first step. Okay, how do you create OKRs? So company-wide OKRs should encompass the entire company. So everything that actually matters for that company should be included here. Because reminder, once you create these OKRs, you're not going to change them for whatever your cadence is. So if it's for that month, those are the only things you're working on that month. Anything else gets put into another folder and you'll deal with it next month, or maybe not, right? Depending on what your focus is. So when you create these company OKRs, keep that in mind. This is your focus for this month, quarter, whatever your cadence is. And that is what's going to be shown to the entire rest of the team, so that they can feel like their work contributes to some of the priorities, right? So typical company level OKRs include that generally they're like one of these. One is profit, right? If you're very, very early in your pre-revenue, this might not be included, right? Because you might not have a product yet and you might be just a product focused right now, which is great. That makes you even more focused and you're just doing things to build the product. When you're closer to the end of the cycle of building your product, you're going to want to start to have conversations, right, with potential customers. Even if your product isn't done, if you have anything to show them, you're going to want to start to have those conversations and get people to sign up early, sign an LOI, all that good stuff. So profits can also mean, profits just mean something that's headed towards the revenue direction. If you're early, it could be free beta users, right? People that can validate that you can get profit in the future. Second is product or service. So like make our customers happy, right? If it's a service, if you're a consulting agency, for example, or something like that, you're providing a service, you want to make sure that that's doing really well. Or if it's a product, which I assume most of you are, some sort of tech, how do we improve that product? How do we make sure that product's making the most sense? And then last is people. You saw earlier, even within the mission and vision statements, some of the companies actually include their people because focusing on them is really important, right? These are the people that are going to make it happen. For tech in particular, also, your biggest line item is your people. Like a lot of companies nowadays, they don't produce anything, they don't print anything, they're not making widgets. They are paying people salaries, and in tech, very high salaries. And so how do you create a positive and transparent environment where everybody's inspired to do their best work? These are generally the type of OKRs that you see, and those will be pretty all-encompassing, right? Outside of getting more revenue, getting more clients, building a really, really good product or service, and treating your employees well, there isn't really much else that's generic enough for all these companies. So unless you're doing something very specific. Okay, so within the OKR framework, another framework that I use a lot is called RACI. It stands for Responsible, Accountable, Consulted, and Informed. And it is a good way to basically delegate work to your teams. This works even if you're just a co-founding team, but obviously gets even more and more crucial as the team grows. So the RACI framework is a great way to dictate who's involved in objectives and how. You saw earlier that I had an owner for everybody. That's actually the account. Oh, how did I do that? I think it's my mouse. Like every time um, so we'll start from the top to bottom. First is responsible. Who are the people that are actually doing the work? The people that are actually, so in this case, if let's say, for example, I'm just making this up, your objective is to improve the product, you're a tech product, the people responsible are going to be all the engineers working on it. The accountable party is the ultimate manager. This means the person that is project managing, the person who is the ultimate accountable party. If something gets stalled, if something goes wrong, if people aren't sure about anything, this is the person that they go back to. Basically, a little bit of a harsh way to say this, but this is the person whose head is on the chopping block if the hype, if the experiment isn't complete. Next is consulted. Who is the person that needs to give input throughout the project? So if you think about this, if we're using the same example of building out the product, maybe there's a CTO that's managing this. The CTO might be the accountable party. If the CEO isn't technical and isn't involved in building the product at all, I would imagine the CEO is also consulted, right? They need to give input. They're the ones talking to the customers. They're the ones talking to VCs saying, hey, we're building this generative AI tool, but it needs to have X, Y, and Z. Again, yeah, usually senior leadership or others that have relevant experience and can provide strong feedback, and their feedback is needed. And then finally, it's informed. These are people that need to be notified of the progress of the project. I say this for early stage startups. This is usually everybody. Like you should, if you're a team of 5 people, everyone should know what's going on at all times. But you can imagine as your company scales to 100, 210 thousands of people, it becomes important to be very specific on who's doing the work, who's held accountable, who needs to give input, and really importantly too, who needs to be notified throughout the progress of the project. Usually somebody whose work depends on it, right? Maybe they can't start their project until this is done. They don't necessarily give feedback, but they just need to know what's going on. And then there's going to be a whole bunch of people at the company that just don't know that this is happening, which is totally fine because they need to focus on what they're focused on. For OKRs, for such early stage startups where it's less than like 10 employees, the most important delegation here is the accountable party. This is, when we went back to the example, these are the owners, Tom and Danielle. These people probably created this objective. They're the ones that decided what those key results are. They're the ones that are going to say, yes, this hypothesis worked. So the experiment went well. We're doing good. Something's working with our sales or our marketing or our product. And they're also the ones that'll say, no, it didn't work. Let's try something new. If they don't complete the experiment, that's when, they're on the chopping block of like, all right, why didn't this happen? What's the delay? What's going on? And a lot of times there's good reason, right? Somebody quit or, our dev shop is late. But it's important to have that accountable person because they're the one that basically manages that project and can tell you, this stuff isn't working. We're going to focus on this or whatever their learnings are from that experiment. So the reason this is really valuable, I think I mentioned all of these, but just to reiterate, it clarifies the role of each team member plays in tackling the objective. So like, am I working on it? Am I just giving feedback? Other than clarity, adds the framework basically instills confidence in the team. Each member knows how they're contributing. Everybody knows exactly what their role is. It's very clear cut. I am working on the project. I actually own the project. So I need to make sure this is happening. There's a lot of issues sometimes between accountable and responsible parties because you're managing the project, but the people that are responsible aren't getting it done. And so it's important to put it on one person to drive the performance of that team, which goes into accountability, right? If that person owns it, you best believe they're going to be tracking it daily, weekly, monthly to make sure that it is happening. And if there's an issue, having conversations with those people and letting others know why there's a delay. And then last, it helps avoid conflict and confusion around roles and responsibility. People know they're involved. This goes back to what I was saying of like putting 2 people in charge. I see this a lot. Actually, I remember when I was in college, a lot of student groups had co-presidents. Never worked well. Never worked well. Co-presidents, co-CEOs, they have the same job. And so if they don't do it, they're going to be like, oh, I bet the other person's doing it. And whenever you give people the opportunity to put it on somebody else or, to have a scapegoat, it's human instinct to just, assume certain things. We're always assumers, which is why you want to take that out. Don't let anybody assume anything, and be very clear. This is what you're doing. This is what you're owning. This is how you're helping. Which is why I love this framework.
We have a question in the chat. JJ, do you want to ask it out loud, or do you want me to do it? I'll give him.
Oh, what are
What are
practical?
practical? Yeah, you got it.
Oh, sorry, I forgot you're reading out loud.
Hey, JJ, I'm happy you're with us.
Hey y'all, glad to be here. Super interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's very content heavy, so I am realizing it as I'm going through. I'm like, I probably shouldn't have combined so many presentations together. But what are practical ways you've seen to track OKRs? Yeah, that's a really, really good question. A lot of people use Airtable and Google Sheets. I think it's really good.
We use Airtable at
Oh.
the garage for so like while teams are incubating with us on a quarterly basis, I send out a form through Airtable. And the beauty of these types of kind of I guess they're what is relational databases, is that you can then use it to connect to other elements of information that we have on the team, and we can hold each other accountable week after week based off of what they put together. It's just a great repository. But I know that like there are a million platforms now for this type of stuff. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be so technical. It could even probably be on a spreadsheet. It's just a little more manual.
Totally. Yeah. I think when you're first starting out, a spreadsheet is easier. Sometimes I find with tech companies, we like to over engineer everything because we're so excited, and particularly excited about other tools. I see someone else commented that they used to use Notion. Notion is awesome too. Anything that is as basic as possible, because all you want to do is you want to say yes or no. It happened, it didn't happen, it worked, it didn't work, right? You want to make it as easy as possible for you. The reason I stopped earlier is because I was thinking like if I could show you guys mine or my clients, but it has a lot of like confidential information and this is recorded. So I was like, maybe not.
I felt the same thing on my side. I was like, oh,
yeah.
I wish I could show them what I'm talking about. But
So
no.
now I actually, oh, you know what? I actually do have an example that is, how do I get out of this? That is, I can't show you guys. I think it's like
eyes. While you look it up, I'll just mention, one of the things that I often tell the smaller teams, because like using the RACI matrix or even OKRs can seem a little bit superfluous when like you're one of two co-founders and literally you're doing everything, right? Like, so you feel stupid because you do all this work and then you assign it to yourself. But what it does is it actually is like, it's just building a good muscle that you can then use to help delegate once you are capable of hiring people to take on those discrete sections of objectives and key results. And so it's like never too early to start. It might seem like overkill, but it's not. You're basically developing the foundation of how you will approach management down the line, which is huge.
Yeah. And again, the value is like tenfold, because not only is it easy to hand off to somebody else, it's also you have all your data and your metrics that you're tracking and all of these experiments that you can showcase to investors. You can showcase to the angels that you're going to pitch to and say, look, I've been tracking this and this is how successful we've been. And it makes it so easy. A lot of times founders get to that first funding round and they don't have anything that they've tracked. So they're like, how many people have you talked to? How many experiments have you run? And it's like, let me go back to my email or calendar and look up every single time I've done this. So I actually, there's a famous CEO coach. He's coached like the CEOs of Crunchbase and Flexport and all these big tech companies in the Bay. And he posted this OKR tracker that he uses. So I actually replicated mine to match his, and he's used it for really, really big companies. So you can see that at the top here, these are the company OKRs. So companies aligned, effective, and efficient. So here they're saying, I want to make sure the company is working well together. Product X is ready to launch, and then massively grow revenue to be on a long term. And then he has his key results here. And what he does is, I guess, monthly meeting with the CEOs, adds the date of the meeting and says on track, poor, and lagging. And so you can see, oh man, what is this? At least 10 paying customers, we are not doing good. We haven't even gotten any customers. We're so behind on this. I like to make it even more specific. I like to say like one customer this week, one customer, so that every date actually has its own weekly. That's actually in the next part with the KPIs. But this is amazing, and especially if you do the conditional formatting so that you can track and see it. Once you get a little bit more sophisticated, I recommend using Airtable, because then you can, or you can use Airtable just as a sheet, right, without anything sophisticated. And then you can add it on top so that it's connected to other things. So let's say there's a different tab for marketing, whatever. And then once this is done, it goes there because that's the next step. I love those types of automations. Here, it's very simple. It's like, okay, the group is the company. The CEO owns all of these, and this is what he's working on. So people can be like, oh, why is it? And this is available to the entire company. So imagine you're like entry-level engineer. You can say, oh, wow, okay, this part of the product isn't going well. Maybe I can help there, right? Let me reach out to my boss and say, I want to support in one of our high objectives. And then you see that he's done it for the departments. So marketing, product, engineering. This is obviously for a much bigger organization, but this is how simple it can be. Like, he is a coach for some of the best CEOs in the world, and this is what he uses. For an early stage startup, I would say just use a Google Sheet, something very, very simple. When you get past, in my opinion, 20 to 30 employees, that's when it becomes a little bit more complicated, and you might want to use a performance management system. Like, one of my favorite is called Lattice. And what it does is it ties your OKRs to like your bonus structure, and you can actually track how you're performing, and everybody else on the team can as well. So it becomes very transparent for the entire company. There's someone's order. Okay, wait, what time? This ends in like 5 minutes?
It does, but I'm always happy to go over because I recorded, and future people might want to hear if you go over what you would say. It's not a hard stop for me.
Okay, I might have to jump like a few minutes after I have an internal meeting, but I'll run through the individual KPIs. This is like the final portion, right? So we did your company OKRs. That's where you're focused on for that month. So for you guys, maybe it's this month I'm focused on talking to 20 customers or 100 customers. And then at a very early stage, you don't want to have any more than 3 objectives, right? Every month, I would say even 2. This month is just talking to customers and interviewing CTOs or interviewing a dev shop. That's all I'm doing this month. Next month, if you haven't hit it, you can move the OKR over and continue to do that. But I would recommend changing your key results so that it's more specific. And then what you want to do is create KPIs for yourself as well. So this is your weekly to-do list. This is how you take it all the way from top to bottom. The value KPIs, if you're not familiar, they're called key performance indicators. So it's how well you're performing. If you've been at a bigger company, sometimes they use these as like, this is what you need to be doing the entire year. You know, it's a little bit like of a longer process, but the reason these are so valuable, particularly for early stage startups, is because they remind you what your daily focus is. This can be used as your weekly to-do list. The value here is tracking progress against objectives. Like, all right, am I actually doing the things that I said I would do in my objectives? Create an analytical basis for decision-making. All right, I've been doing this for 3 weeks and it's not working. Why not? What is the data saying? What are the things I can try to improve this? Helps you focus on what matters most. And then finally helps you get a better idea of how the company is performing as a whole. So if you can see everybody's KPIs, that's like ideal. So some examples. Oh no, it's not updated. Oh, I updated the bottom one. I don't know why my deck is looking all. Okay, so if we take the objective and key result we looked at earlier, right? We looked at the revenue one that Tom is running, right? He wants to get to 500K in monthly revenue. He wants to hire all these SDRs, and he's going to do that by hiring the sales ops person. He can set recurring and non-recurring KPIs. So recurring every week for this month. So for the 4 weeks of this month, he needs to do at least 3 of the following tasks: write a job description, post a job, or conduct 1 interview. So he needs to be doing that every week. That's the way he knows he had a successful week. I did those 3 tasks. And then he needs to run 1 sales experiment per week. So again, he's the owner. So maybe somebody else is actually running them, but he needs to make sure that it's happening. And then finally, non-recurring for this specific week or for this specific month, he needs to finalize the sales ops hire, because once he hires them, other things can happen. So again, you're breaking this down from like all the way of your vision. This is where we want to be. This is our monthly objectives. This is what we're accomplishing, all the way down to here's what we're doing this week. And then obviously you take it a step further, and the beginning of each day, what I do is I take my weekly list and I say, okay, I have 5 things. I finished one yesterday. Which one am I focusing on today? So how do you create them? Company-wide OKRs should be broad enough to encompass the whole company. That is like your monthly, and then your KPIs is your weekly. So you do them in 2 examples, like I showed before. The recurring, these are items you need to complete weekly. Example, a sales rep might need to, like a sales rep, that's doing cold calls, maybe their KPI for the week is 150 cold calls a week. Every single week, he or she has to do those 150 cold calls, no exceptions. That is your recurring. For founders, at your stage, I'm assuming a lot of you guys are doing customer discovery. I would recommend making that a priority, right? I see a lot of founders that say, oh, I did customer discovery 6 months ago. I talked to 20 people. Okay, that's not enough, especially if you're a consumer product. Every single week, you should at least be talking to 1 or 2 people. That's how you get more and more data. And honestly, you also don't get outdated information. Markets change very quickly these days, especially with AI. And then your non-recurring KPIs. These are the weekly items that you get to your monthly, quarterly objectives. Example, initiating or finalizing a project. So at the beginning of each week, you reset them. So, I wanted to go back to that. So in conclusion, basically you want everything to be tied together. You want to have this big vision that is 10 years in the future. You want to know what your purpose is and what your vision is, the values that you work by and what matters most to you. And then you want to set your quarterly, monthly objectives and break it down every single week. Whenever you do all of these things, if you remember the first slide that said like, you only change these every year, change these every quarter, monthly and weekly, that is when you get to change them. Any more than that, and you get shiny object syndrome, where you're running to that next item, and you're trying new things, and they're so outside of the scope of what you're trying to do. So highly recommend using this framework. Definitely recommend sticking to things a little bit longer and giving yourself the opportunity to experiment on a monthly or weekly level, so that you can decide what's going to happen next week or next month while still sticking to the overall top vision, and trying all these different things and making it happen. So yeah, I think we're like 1 minute over. Oh, share the link to the sample OKR tracker. Yeah, that's a good idea.
This has been so helpful, Faye. And like she said, it's very heavy in terms of content. So I will be sending out this recording to everybody. The chat will also be included. Consider joining us for our next Oceanside Chat. I believe it's next week, which is on marketing tips for business owners. Another woman out there killing it in the world of business, and she's a first-time Oceanside Chat speaker, but I think she's going to break this conversation into 2 parts. But for now, I really just want to thank Faye for spending this time with us, and maybe I'll get some emails, or Faye will get some emails on future topics of conversation. I know that you have a wealth of knowledge, and the fact that you come and share that with us pro bono, you guys, she's here on her own time to support you guys. We just can't thank you enough, Faye.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I know it was very content heavy, so I feel like it takes some time to absorb it, but I would definitely recommend starting small, like set out your monthly and weekly objectives and see how much it helps you focus. For me, I literally have it on post-its. Like I have these post-its where I'm like, okay, it's on my laptop too. This is what I'm doing today. Every time I get distracted, somebody sends me an email. I'm like, look back at the post-it. No, this is all I'm doing today. That's for another time. And it really helps you get through things so much faster. So I hope it was helpful. And yeah, thanks for having me again.
Sorry, I tried to unmute myself and instead I opened up like the options. Yeah, you've been great. Love you so much. I hope to hear from you again soon to come back for VC Angel Office Hours, which we're going to be hosting later. We're bringing in a whole new cohort, so there's going to be new teams in the garage, and we're also bringing in some space teams. So we have a little bit of a little focus right now, which is fun. But yeah, thank you so much. And hopefully, we'll have another one of these opportunities with you again.
Awesome. Thank you guys. See you soon. Bye.